Hi, want to learn something about tempo? As we all know, a steady beat only is very boring. But this is not true for the beginning. If a steady beat comes out of nothing, then this steady beat gets our attention. In childhood, we all have once observed how drops are falling. As more water is accumulating in the bubble gets bigger. And if the bubble is big enough, the surface tension can no longer hold the weight of the drop. And the drop falls, making a nice sound. If it is steadily raining, the blobs are also steady. This gets very fast boring, so that we are ignoring the drops and do no more realize them. However, if the rain gets stronger, the beat of the falling drops gets faster. We start realizing the drops again. So, change gets our attention. And steadiness gives us a secure feeling that everything is okay. This balance between an event requiring our attention and the well-known repeating steadiness is used by musicians to produce tension and relaxation in the music. So let us learn something about tempo and note length. We have seen the quarter note and learned to clap the rhythm. The teacher was giving the beat and you had to continue clapping that beat. But what if no person gives the beat? How does the notation tell us how fast we should play a note? Well, we have here the tempo marker. It tells us how many beats per minute we have to clap. The denominator of the time signature tells us which note gets the beat. Usually it is a quarter note which gets the beat. In this sample, with a tempo of 60, that means a quarter note has a duration of 1 second. Therefore, we have to clap every second 1 time. Pretty slow. It is very easy to change that. Just set the tempo to 120. Now, the notation of beats per minute is pretty easy for us, since we all have access to a watch. But music is as old as humans exist. In this way, in Middle Age, where wristwatches with a second hand were not yet invented, the musicians had to use other means. In the 17th century, the musicians introduced a system based on names to convey the speed at which a piece should be played. The tempo markings and the approximate number of beats per minute are larghissimo, the slowest tempo marking, up to prestissimo, the fastest marking. These Italian terms were not only used to describe the number of beats, but were also associated with moods. For example, Adagio also assumed that the piece should be played to sad events. Today, metronomes are used for tempo settings. A metronome is any device that produces regular metrical ticks, settable in beats per minute. In the upcoming exercise, you have to identify the tempo of a well-known refrain from the Beatles. Of course, the refrain does not consist only of quarter notes. It contains longer and shorter notes. We will discuss the note lengths and other rhythm elements in the next lesson. To be able to solve this quiz, I will play the refrain with the most common tempi. So listen carefully and try to remember the tempo marking that goes along the demonstration. As a visual cue, the walking distance for 1 and 2 seconds is displayed. Largo, Adagio, Andante, Moderato, Allegro, Vivace, Presto. Ready for the tempo markings exercise? Listen to the refrain and click the appropriate tempo indication. To ease the task, click the different hint buttons. Good. It is not easy to determine the beat if not all notes have the same length. It is even difficult if you only have blobs, which have all the same loudness. Therefore, the beat usually is combined with a rhythm element, the loudness. The first blob is usually louder. Then the number in the denominator tells us after how many beats we have to restart counting and make a louder blob again. Since the time difference between the louder blobs is larger, it is easier to deduct the beat. This broader scope helps us to break down a whole piece into more manageable chunks. To better visualize these moments, the musicians introduced the measure or bar. The flow of the notes is divided by bar lines into measures. Here, the upper number in the meter tells us that we have 4 beats before we restart counting with 1. In this way, after every 4th note comes a bar. This is of course only true because we have only quarter notes in our sample. The notes which get the beats. With other notes, there could be more or less notes in a measure. The bar lines always come after nominator times the duration of one beat, regardless of what notes are in a measure. In the next exercise, click the buttons where the bars have to be set. Good. The first beat of a measure usually has a stronger accent. This so-called primary accent is not explicitly marked with an accent mark. It is implicitly assumed by the repeating counting pattern. In these two samples, nothing shows us a difference in the timing of the claps. Every half a second we have to clap a note. Here, because the tempo is 120 beats per minute. And here, because you have eighth notes which only use half the time of a quarter note. The two scores still can be rhythmically distinguished because of the metric accent. In the first sample, we have a metric accent after 3 notes, whereas in the second case, we have an assumed strong accent after 6 notes. After having learned something about beats per minute, tempo markings, bar lines, measures, and implied metric accents, we continue in the next lesson with the duration of the notes.